Today we're talking about being able to plan, prepare, and present positively. And if we want to present positively, which we always do with our presentations, we want to be effective, and to be effective, we must feel confident. And how do we feel confident? My number one tip is to prepare. Preparation is the most important step in giving a good presentation and then in feeling confident when speaking. I would say never go into a presentation or a speech thinking you can wing it, because panic is sure to follow if you do, whether it's a one-on-one, your weekly meeting with your group, or a presentation for many, many people. Preparation is really important. And when you're thinking about what you're going to put in your presentation, I suggest that you put yourself in the audience's shoes and ask yourself, what is it that the audience wants to know? And I suggest that if you write out your presentation describing it in one complete sentence and then build around that idea, this will help keep your presentation focused and precise, and then you won't go off on a tangent. And I'm sure we've all heard presentations where the speaker has um, just gone off track because she's not been totally focused on what she's speaking on. When you're preparing your speech, think to yourself, is this a speech to inform or a speech to persuade the audience? Then we can work on my motivated sequence to organize your presentation to make it the most effective for the listener and make it easy for you to put in presentation form. The motivated sequence is 5 steps that follow the natural thought processes of the listener. And these steps are attention, need, satisfaction, visualization, and action. I'm sure when you were in school, when you're writing a paper or giving a presentation, you studied introduction, body, conclusion. Well, this 5-step process just makes it much easier for you to organize and makes it much easier for the audience to follow you. In the attention step, you want to be creative. You want to get not just attention, but favorable attention, and think about some creative way to open your presentation. The second step is the need, where you describe the problem and give the facts about what you're speaking. If you are doing a speech to inform the audience, you would only use the first 3 steps: attention, need, satisfaction. If you're trying to persuade the audience, get them to change their mind, get them to take action, you would use all 5 of these steps. And so simply the third step is to present the solutions to the problem. We can talk about this in greater length, but I just wanted to give you an idea. In the presentation of a persuasive speech, the 4th step would be visualization, where you visualize the results for the audience, either positively or negatively, and then they can see where you're trying to head them in the speech and make a positive decision. The final step is the action step. So you're asking the audience to take action or make a change in their beliefs. And this becomes very effective and a very easy way to hang the steps of your speech when you're preparing them. Just as important as what you're saying is how you're saying it, of course. And so I have developed, the last seminar we did was called 10 Steps to a More Dynamic Voice. And if I hone that down to my 3 most important steps, I call it my APB. You might have heard in old police shows, send out for the APB, all points bulletin, where my APB is articulation, projection, and breathing. So you need to really articulate all your words, really opening your mouth and making every sound very clear, projecting your voice, and the most important and easy way to do that is with effective breathing, that you're taking a breath throughout the beginning and ending of each sentence so that everything you say is supported with the breathing. Then when you are putting your speech together, less is always more. edit and focus your speech often, and also your PowerPoint. Again, using the motivated sequence will help you keep your presentation as tight and focused as it should be. And when you are getting ready to prepare your speech, type it in large type double space and space out the sentences on the page so that when you look down, you can find your place easily. Complete the last sentence on the bottom of the page so you don't turn a page mid-sentence and get caught, and always number your pages. Editing your speech again goes back to focusing on the audience, on what it is that the audience wants to know and what you need to focus on for that specific audience. For every situation, of course, the audience is different, and perhaps you are doing a speech for a small group in your office, and then you're have to maybe give a similar speech to outsiders who aren't as familiar with the areas you're talking about. So you would focus your speech differently. And what's really important with many people talk about being so nervous in front of an audience and they're feeling like the audience is judging them. But remember, you are only responsible for yourself. You're not responsible for the audience. You've probably heard that expression, picture your audience naked, and that's the worst advice that you could possibly get. You need to, again, focus on yourself, preparing your best possible presentation, and then the way the audience responds to your presentation will depend on how well you are doing. Remind yourself that you need to use positive thinking in what you're in your preparation. I work with many clients who feel very nervous, and they often say that they call up feelings of childhood where they're feeling criticized and or not confident, and sometimes we don't even realize that that's where these thoughts are coming from. So I've developed a little three-part mantra, if you want to call it that, to remind yourself to change those negative thought processes in your mind and replace them with positive thoughts. And you can, if you, I have many clients who do this every day. And instead of saying to yourself, oh, I can't wait for this to be over, or the audience won't like what I have to say, I'm not prepared. If you put together your own three-part mantra every day and say it, you'll begin to believe it yourself. And so the first one would be, I'm really happy to share my knowledge with the audience. The reason you have been asked to speak in most situations is because the audience wants to hear what you have to say and they need your knowledge. I have many younger clients who say, well, I feel intimidated speaking to older colleagues, and maybe they don't consider me as knowledgeable. But that's why they've hired you, because they want your young expertise and your new ideas. So saying to yourself, I'm happy to share the knowledge I have with the audience, will help you believe it. And number two is, I have a lot of great information to share with the audience. So again, you're telling yourself, I can't wait for this to be over. No, you're telling yourself, I'm really happy that I have this information to share. And again, not judging the audience or worrying about the audience, you're telling yourself, the audience wants to hear what I have to say. And that's the reason that you are there. So try that, and again, replace those negative thoughts with positive. In any time you give a presentation, I always advise that you arrive early and check out the room, check out the microphone, check out where you'll be speaking, the lighting, because you don't want to walk into any surprises. I've seen too many situations where the speaker arrives 2 seconds before he's supposed to speak, and then the PowerPoint doesn't work, the lighting is wrong, the seating is wrong. So you want to get there early and make sure everything is the way you want it. So again, you're able to be confident and relaxed and effective. Again, be aware of yourself and your voice and keep your energy up all the time. This may be the 10th time that you've given the same presentation, but remember, it's the first time for the audience. So you want to, again, after you've done your 3-part mantra every day, um, keep that energy up and that enthusiasm up throughout your whole presentation. And always start, I say, with a smile. Even if it's a serious subject, this way you're relaxing yourself and you're inviting the audience in with your positive attitude. Another idea and point, don't apologize either non-verbally or verbally. How often have you heard a speaker say, well, I'm not used to doing this, or this isn't my area of expertise, or I'm not prepared? The audience doesn't want to hear that. They just want to hear your information and have you give it in the most positive and confident way that you can. And also be aware of any extraneous movements of wringing your hands or tapping your foot or shaking your head or making a face when you finish. I've seen that too often too, that, oh, I'm trying to get through this presentation. So, you've made a face and that kind of detracts from the whole presentation. Also, be aware of the time frame for your speech. As I mentioned earlier, less is more. And if you have a 45-minute speech, that's a lot different from a 15-minute speech. So again, you need to plan ahead and only work on the most salient points for that speech. And I always say, too, make sure that everything is meat and there's no filler. And so that you have a lot of facts included in your speech, your presentation, you've done your research, and you've cut out anything that's not exactly relevant to what the topic is that you're speaking about. Also, as I mentioned with PowerPoint presentations, less is more is even more important. Use the fewest words possible on the screen if you do have to use PowerPoint, because PowerPoint should add to your presentation and enhance it, not distance the audience from it. The audience should be listening to you. I'm sure you've seen presentations in which the speaker puts everything on the PowerPoint and then just kind of reads from the PowerPoint, and that's not what you want. You want a few words or graphics to illustrate definite points that you need to make that will enhance your presentation. Again, the audience wants to listen to you, and if you've put everything on the PowerPoint, you might as well just hand out a copy and they can read it for themselves. And finally, when you're finished, have a precise ending to your speech. Don't ramble on. When you're finished, stop. Too often, I'm sure you've heard people have 2 or 3 endings and they don't know where they're going with the speech, and then they just kind of trail off. So it's very important to be confident and have a precise ending to your speech so that they remember what it is that your main points are. There's another little saying that you might have heard about presentations. Tell them what you're going to tell them, tell them what you told them. So tell them what you're going to tell them. And that doesn't mean, hi, I'm here today to talk about public speaking. No, but put it in an attention step that can give you and give the audience an idea of what you're talking about and make them want to continue to listen. Tell them what you're going to tell them, and then that corresponds to, let me just go back to the 5 steps of the motivated sequence, the need and the satisfaction step, that you're describing what it is you're talking about, what the problems might be, and then you're presenting possible solutions in the satisfaction step. And then in the tell them what you told them, then you're summarizing what it is you've talked about in the presentation, and you're asking the audience's cooperation in moving forward with it. You may, if you're doing a persuasive speech, request action, get a change of beliefs, vote for this candidate, buy this stock from me, whatever the situation is that you've done it in an exciting and interesting manner. Again, just because we have a couple of minutes here, going back to thinking about preparing your speech. And I think when I work with students on preparation, often the confidence is what gets them, and the idea that they think they don't have to prepare, but can go in there for the presentation a few minutes before with just some notes on a piece of paper. Again, I often find that that's when panic happens and the situation isn't as effective as it can be. So doing the outline, thinking about your audience and what it is they want to know will help you keep your speech focused and precise. A little more on how you're saying it along with what you're saying. If you think and plan ahead, working on your voice and thinking about it every day, the breathing is really, really important. And that's, I hear from so many clients that they get hoarse, they lose their voices, their voices sound weak, and all of that has to do with the breathing. So I want you to work on taking a breath before every phrase and keeping that sound up with getting that breath in and not having long and rambling sentences. I suggest that you speak in shorter sentences for the presentation so that you're able to keep that energy up all the way through. Again, remembering that you're only responsible for yourself, and if you are confident and you have prepared well, then the audience will respond to you in a very positive way. I know we only have a short amount of time, so I wanted to get through everything here. And if you have some questions early, I'll be happy to answer them. And if not, I can go through the points in more detail. So do we have any questions, Maggie?
Yes, Karen, we had some questions come in, and I'll remind everyone now you can email info@savvyladies.org if you have a question, or you can use the chat box. One of the questions we had is, the presentations I give for work aren't that riveting. How can I be more engaging when the subject matter is pretty dry?
That's a great question. And I have many clients, you may or may not know that I teach at New York University, and I've in fact had other professors take my class saying, well, what I teach is very boring. And if you feel it's boring, then the audience is going to feel it's even more boring. And I don't believe there are any boring subjects at all. But you have to, again, look at it in new and engaging ways. And when I talked about looking for the meat in the speech and not just filler, you need to find the facts that are really salient to what you're saying. And if you speak them with enthusiasm, the audience will receive them with enthusiasm. If you, one of my points in my 10 steps is, I've had people ask me, how do I sound confident? Well, you sound confident and you sound energized if you feel that way. So if you feel this information is really interesting, I mean, I might just have to give some statistics on what happened last quarter. But if you pump up your own energy and you believe, this can make a difference to this audience. We had a 1% increase in sales, and that can add up to 12% a year, or whatever it is, that if you feel that it's exciting, then your audience will feel it's exciting. But you do a little more research and make sure you have some really good facts to back up what it is you're saying, and really good information, and look to make it as interesting as you can. I hope that helps.
Okay, thank you. Another question is, I know I can't remember everything I need to say. Are flashcards a bad thing to use during presentations?
No, and that's a very good question. And I never recommend going into a presentation thinking you can speak without any notes at all, that you can memorize it, because all that is going to do is give you much more pressure and make the audience often feel uncomfortable when you're trying to remember your next point. I recommend either, if it's a formal presentation, that you have it all written out and then you work on making it sound conversational, as I pointed out, typing your presentation in a large font, highlighting points so that you can maintain eye contact, which is very important with the audience, and then looking down and looking up. But I think that's a really effective way, is using 5x7 cards and having bullet points on the cards, so that you're always able to look down and then look up and make eye contact with the audience. And then that will give you much more confidence that you're not going to just all of a sudden forget everything that you're talking about. And again, I never recommend going in just thinking you can speak off the cuff and speak without notes at all. I coached a client once just on giving a toast for a wedding. And we worked on it quite a lot and we had it all organized. And he said, "Well, I think I can go in. I think I'm ready." I said, "Well, just write your points down on a 5x7 card." Well, he did. And when he got up, he said his mind totally went blank. So he was really happy to have that card, because then he could look down and get the points, and he made a very effective speech. So yes, flashcards, I think 5x7 cards are good. And if you have your speech typed out, again, make sure it's in large enough font so you can look down and look up, that you don't, you're not writing these cards and little scribble around the edges, which I've seen clients do too, that it's easy for you to see these points, and then that will help keep you confident too.
Okay, thank you. Another question we had come in is, you mentioned know your audience, but what if your audience is pretty varied?
Well, I mean, that can happen too. And then when you're preparing your speech, you're making your presentation that much more varied as well. So that if you have people of different ages or you have people of different backgrounds, that you're maybe keeping the points uh, a little more simplistic and not so technical. Maybe if you were talking about a technical area of finance, and put it in simpler terms so that people can understand it easily. I had a couple of students in my current NYU term who work in finance, and they would use all these terms in the business that even I didn't understand, or some other of the students didn't understand. So I recommend that you use those terms slowly. Don't use abbreviations like BXT, or whatever. They had some um, abbreviations that insiders would know, but a general audience would not. So you could say, well, it's XYZ, and then use the whole phrase and repeat that a few times so that the audience can follow you. The idea that you always want to keep in mind is that the audience will stay with you, and isn't going to get lost. And so, if you've got a more general audience, you want to keep it simple enough that people who don't know the inside jargon can follow, but then again, have enough meat in your presentation that people who know more can also follow and stay aware.
All right, thank you. And another question is, what if I've told myself that the audience wants to hear what I have to say, but during my presentation, I look out and I see yawning or people playing on their phones? This has happened to me before.
That is another great question, and it happens very often. And I have a great example for that. Again, you are not responsible for the audience. You are responsible for giving the best and most interesting and vibrant and energetic presentation you can. And if you are, then the audience is really going to listen. But sometimes you look out and you see faces that make you wonder or feel uncomfortable, but you cannot know what's going on in the audience person's mind. The example I have, a client saw somebody he knew in the audience very well, and the audience member fell asleep during his presentation, and he was utterly mortified. And so then after he found out that this person was feeling very ill, but had wanted to hear his presentation anyway, and even though he shouldn't have come, he did come to hear him. So even though it looked like his eyes were closed, he in fact was there to support the speaker. So you never know what's going on through an audience member's mind. They might have some problems at work, a problem with their child, a problem with the boss. They're worried about what's happening. They didn't get any sleep last night. But that's not your problem again. And that's why I want you to say, the audience is happy to hear what I have to say, and believe it. Because all kinds of situations can happen with individual members. Another point about the audience, some people feel like they can't make eye contact with people, that makes them nervous, or they may pick one person out in the audience and kind of just hone in on them. And I want you to remember that the audience, goes all the way around. So if you can divide the audience into 3 sections, kind of look to the left, look to the middle, look to the right, so that you're engaging everyone in the audience. And if it really feels uncomfortable for you to look at people in the eye, you can kind of look between 2 people. That's just a little trick. And it makes it seem as if you're looking at them, but you're looking between them. But again, never worry about an individual audience member. I've even had students in class that I think, well, they're not listening, and they turn out to be the ones who have gotten the most out of the class. So you never really know what's going on in a person's mind. Again, the focus needs to be on you yourself and giving the best presentation you can. How they receive it is up to them. How the audience receives what you have to say is up to the audience. Your responsibility is to give the best presentation you can.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Karen. Those are the questions we have. Did you want to talk a little bit about this last slide here?
Oh, yes. Thank you, everybody, for listening today. And I hope it's been helpful to you. And I'm very happy to follow up with you in much more detail. If you're interested in working with me on either your presentation skills, on voice improvement, on overcoming fear of public speaking, or on accent reduction and clearer speech, I'm really delighted to work with you one-on-one. I can offer you a big discount on a 4-session package, but we can also talk about a discount if you want to start with 1 session and then see how you like it, and then we can add sessions as you feel. I can honestly say that I've never had any client come and not follow up with at least a 4 or 6 session package after the first session. We can work at any time and any day of the week that is good for you. Everything is very positive that I do, very supported, and everything includes a lot of handouts and exercises that I think will make a big difference in your presentations. I know a lot of you are in the finance industry, and I have worked with many, many people in the finance industry, and I know this could be a great help for you. So on the slide is my phone number, my email, and my website that you can take a look at. I also teach at New York University, and I'm doing another summer term starting in July. Email me if you're interested in that. It's been a great pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks, Karen. Do you have time for another question that just came in?
Oh, sure. I have plenty of time.
Okay, great. So the question is, how useful do you think organizations like Toastmasters are?
Well, Toastmasters is a very good organization. They work totally on what you're saying. And they also like you to memorize your presentations, which is very difficult for people. They go through a 10-step set of presentations, and you can work your way through them, and you get various awards as you finish certain projects. I've actually spoken at some Toastmasters groups working on how you're saying it, on the voice itself. But I think that they can give you some good initial confidence in your presentation work. They they help you with organizing your presentations as well. So yes, that can be very good.
Okay, thank you.
But again, if you are interested in my class at NYU, which is very inexpensive, the class is called 10 Steps to a More Dynamic Voice, and it's in the School of Professional Studies at NYU. And of course, I offer private lessons all the time.
Mhm. Okay, great. And we will send out your contact information to everyone. So I want to thank everyone for joining us, and thank you so much, Karen.
Well, thank you, Maggie, and thank you everyone for listening. I enjoyed it. Have a
Thank
great
you.
day.
You too. Bye bye.
Bye bye.